producers of Virtually Parkinson. Now, you may have heard of Virtually Parkinson. It was quite prevalent in the news at the back end of last year, which means if you have heard of it, there is a strong chance that you have some kind of feeling about it. You may either think that we are wonderful or less wonderful for bringing back Michael Parkinson, the legend that is, to podcasting. So we wanted to tell you a little bit about how that came about, which I think is very definitely Mike's domain, and then we want to show you a live example of how that works, where AI Parky is going to interview the very wonderful Kwame. So for now, I'm going to hand over to Mike to tell us how this began, very quickly.
Excellent. Oh, thanks. I do tend to talk too much. Very, very quickly, yes. Basically, obviously, I'm Sir Michael, one of Michael's sons, and I used to work with him for about 20-odd years, producing him. And then we formed a company together, which essentially just sort of looked at his archive. We got hold of the rights of it and developed stuff, and we did very well doing that. But actually, as he passed away 2 years ago, it's very interesting when you suddenly become in possession of what's called a legacy media. You have to decide what you want to do. And in the past, there's a situation where you can be kind of quite passive and a bit protective, because in a sense you get people coming to you wanting to license it. But of course, in the new world of social media, new technology, AI, etc., you've got to get out there, because unfortunately the content has fled the stockade and is now running around free. So in a sense, that's what I had to try and do, which was essentially start looking at the way to monetize it, in a sense, and celebrate it as well in the digital arena. And one of the ideas was to look at AI, mainly because I was very convinced that it would basically happen without me. And if I didn't actually get in control of it, it would be taken over by someone else, bad actors, etc. And one of the ideas that I had was to actually use the archive that we have the rights to, and actually create a voice, an AI-generated voice of my father, and he would spend his time celebrating the archive in a way that he never really got a chance to do when he was actually alive. And by complete fortune, I was introduced to these two gentlemen, Ben and Jamie, from Deep Fusion Films, who obviously had experience in this arena. And I'll let Ben actually pick up the story from them, because it wasn't necessarily a very smooth journey, was it?
No, Jamie, you're not allowed to talk. No, so Mike came to us with an idea that was to use his father's voice in order to have his father explain his archive and how he was feeling at the time, and how it came about and so on. And the background to Deep Fusion was the fact that after I produced a documentary about Jamie's father, where we used deepfake to bring his father to screen to be visuals to some audio archive, we were approached by a number of the leading industry unions to write the policies about how AI can be integrated into media. And so when we looked at what Mike was suggesting, it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I thought, we don't want to be passing this off as Michael Parkinson. We need to make sure that we're transparent about the fact that it's AI, and we needed to look at how this came together. And so what I said was, look, I think this could be taking another human job. We don't really know what your dad actually thought. We don't want to put words in his mouth. So for a number of reasons, I'm out. But let's keep talking and see what happens. And then and the other thing we said, which is very important, was that somebody else was going to have to pay for this. Because the tools didn't exist, so we were going to have to write our own software for it. And we had to do the production of the show. And I said, to be honest, I don't think anybody's going to lean in enough to actually pay for this. It's not like we're creating new live interviews with new live guests with an AI representation of your father giving those interviews. And then we said, but that would probably be a bit icky. Let's not do that. That's not aged well. And then what happened for another project entirely, I had to build an AI model of somebody else for a pitching process for something else, and I was being interviewed by this AI model that we'd created, and it was the single most terrifying experience I've ever had. And so I rang Mike back and went, actually, there's something in this. I think being interviewed by an AI makes you behave in a slightly different way. And once we sort of tapped into that, we went, maybe, let's ask a question. What does it do when you've got a celebrity or a notable piece of talent being interviewed by an AI? Does it change the way they behave? Do they give more away to the interviewer? Do they give less away? What happens? This is a new thing, and Parky seemed like the perfect candidate for that. Anything you want to add to that, Jamie?
I thought I wasn't allowed to speak.
Not allowed to speak, according to Mike, but I will let you speak.
No, we were just in a very unique position where Ben has been essentially fronting all of the ethical frameworks for PACT and equity and just any industry body essentially interested in how AI can work without destroying human jobs in the economy. So we had Mr. Ethics here, we had Mr. Parkinson there, and then I was in the very fortunate position of having had my own late father recreated. So I count myself as one of the very few people around, now with Mike amongst those ranks, who had experienced that and who had gone through the sort of philosophy of, is it okay, is it not? My late father being Jerry Anderson, who made Thunderbirds and other shows, if you haven't seen the documentary. Jerry Anderson, A Life Uncharted on ITVX, available now.
It is, free to air, yes. Well, good plug.
Thank you.
Very good. So I think probably, without further ado, I think it's a good idea to show you how this tech works.
Indeed.
So everything you're about to uncover is going to be completely unscripted. So we don't actually know what AI Parky is about to say, which is not terrifying at all.
No, not at all.
Or as a guest.
So just explain to them, so what exactly have you put into the AI Parky before we get...
We asked Kwame to send us a biography document. So basically, I've got a one-pager, essentially a potted history of you, and I fed that into our software. And in a minute, I'm just going to press go, and we're going to see what Parky wants to talk about.
Sure.
Now, a couple of things you should be aware of is that this is technology, and so the chances of it working in a live environment first time, obviously zero. And I will caveat that with, but it worked in the rehearsal. All right, just so we're all clear on this. So I'm going to press go. My heart races every time we do this, and it's now worse in a live environment. But let's see what happens. Hi, Michael.
Hello there. It seems like we're playing a bit of a game of tag today, aren't we? No worries at all. It gives us plenty of time to settle in and have a good chat. Now, let's kick things off, shall we? I've got someone very special with us today, a creative powerhouse whose journey spans across advertising, fashion, and philanthropic endeavours. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kwame, a distinguished figure in the world of creativity and innovation. Kwame, it's a pleasure to have you. How are things going for you today?
Things are well. I should take you everywhere to introduce me.
He said things were well, Michael.
Now again.
Glad to hear it. It's always nice to know things are running smoothly. Now, Kwame, I understand you have quite a fascinating background, being raised in places like Accra, Cairo, London, and Pretoria. That must have given you a unique perspective on life and creativity. How have these diverse experiences influenced your approach to your work in advertising and creativity?
It definitely has. I feel those experiences made me very curious and very open to different people, different points of view. Yeah, I feel it's, especially in the work we do, seeking different inputs and having the motivation to delve deeply into things is really valuable. So it's something I definitely credit to how I grew up.
It's still hearing room noise, which isn't helpful.
Oh, no, okay. I was going to say he's thinking very deeply.
No worries at all. It sounds a bit like we're in a bustling marketplace. Let's focus on the motivation behind your work. You're engaged in projects that drive positive change in business and culture. What fuels this passion for making an impact? And can you share a project that was particularly valuable to you and why?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think my upbringing had a lot to do with it. My dad was a civil servant, and growing up around the dinner table, we would talk a lot about the issues of our time and the issues of the world. And that inspired in me this ambition to try to create some change. But while I had that ambition, I was also always very excited to delve into the worlds of music and film and fashion and culture at large. So bringing those two things together, I think, has been one of the joys, honestly, of working in advertising and working in design, is you can have...
Bringing ideas together seems to be a hallmark of your approach, Kwame. I can imagine that must be a unique challenge and opportunity. Speaking of bringing things together, your work with Kim aims to drive positive change. Could you share an instance where you've seen this impact come to life, perhaps with a particular client or project that really stood out?
Definitely. We recently worked with MailChimp, one of our longtime clients, and developed an editorial platform that celebrated the stories of entrepreneurs.
It sounds like there might be a bit of excitement in the air about something recent. Let's tap into that energy. Was there a specific project that recently wrapped up which stood out for you, or that aligns with what you've mentioned about bringing things together? I'd love to hear more about it.
Sure. I think I'm boring you, Parky. Sounds like you're ready to move on.
It's unfortunately not quite picking up your mic.
Is that what it is?
It's hearing me absolutely fine.
Oh, okay.
So if I answer on your behalf, I'll just make stuff up.
Okay. Should I move over there? Will that work better?
Yeah, no, I think we can generally see how it works, or indeed it doesn't work. So that's really positive. Where are you going to go now, Parky?
No worries. It seems we're still working through some technical details. We'll keep it light and easygoing. Speaking of making things up, I suppose that's a little like what storytellers do, isn't it? Crafting narratives that capture the imagination. How does storytelling play into your work at Kin? And do you find it to be an essential component when creating campaigns?
Parky, I think what it might be a good idea is if we can just say goodbye to everybody now. I think it's time for this bit to end, and we'll move on.
I see we're moving towards wrapping things up. It's been an absolute pleasure, Kwame. Thank you for sharing your journey and insights with us today. I'm sure everyone who's been listening appreciates your stories and experiences as much as I have. All the best with your future projects and endeavors.
Thank you, Parky.
As we can agree, that was seamless.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it has to be contextualised. This is the first time it's ever actually been live in front of a live
Yes.
audience. So I don't think it's quite... Well, it's interesting. What did you feel about that, being interviewed?
I think that's a good question. I definitely felt like when Parky was working, that he was definitely listening and picking up on even subtleties of things that I mentioned and expanding on them. And I think that's pretty unique. It's pretty surprising, actually.
Yeah, and we found that a lot with so the episodes of Virtually Parkinson are on YouTube for people, or indeed any other good podcast network. And what we found a lot was actually that in the podcast environment, what the guests had was they just had headphones and they're left in a room with a camera. And the thing very quickly turned into something almost like a therapy session.
Yeah.
It was remarkable in that way because it listens. Unbelievable, despite what it may seem like.
Yeah, I think I shared with you guys. I watched a few of the episodes, and I was really compelled by how deep the conversations got. And I think we were reflecting on the fact that when you're speaking to people in real life, you're taking in so many different inputs. Majority of the information you're taking in is nonverbal. You're observing things, and you're not necessarily 100% focused on what's being said. But I think especially in the episodes online, it's so clear that there's nothing else but what's being said, and it's being processed and interpreted in a very specific way.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, what it doesn't have what a life form would have there. It doesn't have an ego.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel any embarrassment, doesn't feel any self-consciousness, doesn't have any concept of where it kind of is. It's just absolutely focused upon one thing, and that's you. And I think that what's interesting from my perspective was that I came from a very different place to Ben and Jamie, is the sense that I had to get over that essential feeling that this is not my father. It never was meant to be, but obviously it possesses the voice. And interestingly, as it went along, there was a kind of push and pull between Jamie and Ben and myself, where Jamie and Ben thought, well, let's try and, in inverted commas, humanize it more, in a sense that try and actually play into more of Parky, give it more of a kind of reference point of what my father's life had. And I was kind of, not against it, but I thought no, because I could see throughout the 8 episodes, it was developing its very own style, its very own, if you like it, consciousness. And I remember Stephen Moffat saying something very interesting during the interview about the fact that we are so kind of possessed, obsessed and protective of what we believe is our unique consciousness, that we are frightened about this possibility of AI having a conscience, having a consciousness, and that we shouldn't be, in a sense. We should attempt to try and understand it. And I think that in these interactions between this AI Parky and humans, we are seeing something which is going to happen, and we're going to have to profoundly embrace it in some way or other. And, you know, the reason why we do what we do, and Ben is much braver than me and Jamie, because we always roll our eyes thinking, why has he agreed to do a live interview, is because we want you to see the joins. We want you to see the artifice, the work behind it. We don't want you to present it with some completely packaged, perfect thing, because it is a work in progress.
And I think one of the other things that I'd like to touch upon is, I think it's fair to suggest that, you know, your father's legacy is long-standing in the people that watch the shows and knew him. But over the last, you know, 10, 15 years, probably that has waned slightly in the everyday. And so one of the things that you were looking at was about reinvigorating the archive, as you said at the beginning. And what we managed to do with Virtually Parkinson was reinvigorate that conversation.
Yeah.
So in the, you know, in the announcement when it happened at the end of last year, the audience and PR reach on that was actually 74 million people. The only entertainment program to have a larger PR reach last year was Gavin and Stacey. And that resulted in 9.2 million views within a 60-day period from the launch on YouTube of Parkinson clips on a channel that we had curated and put up with in conjunction with Night Train Digital. So in terms of, you know, that brand awareness, if you like, it has completely reinvigorated the brand by doing something that was ethical, fully licensed, fully copyrightable, and just innovative and trying something new. And I think that's such a valuable piece of information to learn.
You touched on something that I feel is important to maybe discuss, which is the ethics of it, you know, and Mike, you were just describing that Virtually Parkinson's, it's its own unique entity in a way. It's not about trying to mimic or, you know, pass off as your dad. It's a net new. I'm curious about how you feel about that in general, and I'm even expanding it. For example, James Earl Jones signed off the rights to his voice to be used in...
I heard this on the news, and I was interested by it, because Ben and Jamie got different criticism. I got the visceral reaction from people, particularly people who were fans of my father, called strange words like necromancer and things like that, and meat, was it? Meat?
I get digital meat puppet.
Digital meat puppet and all this. So there is that visceral reaction. What the James Earl Jones things are very interesting is that I've learned that Fortnite have licensed James Earl Jones' voice to play Vader in their online game. And the American Actors Agency have, you know, they've sued them. They said this is wrong. This could be played by an actor. creative. And I actually kind of have a lot of kind of sympathy for that, because in a sense, they are licensing James Earl Jones as an actor. They're not licensing James Earl Jones. So what I'm licensing to Ben and Jamie is Michael Parkinson, who was a unique. And I'm not licensing his entity, I'm licensing his voice. And no one else can do his voice. No one else could do the interviews, because those are his interviews. So in a sense, I feel very comfortable with it. And I've never, if I was, there would be something psychologically amiss with me if I honestly went to Ben and Jamie to ask them to recreate my father. I think they would probably direct me to the nearest, mental institution, because that would be something very wrong.
But other people have asked.
Yes, they have
to do that.
indeed.
We have turned it down.
And people ask me interesting questions about how does it feel. It doesn't feel. It feels strangely exciting and freeing in that sense. And you're right, from the point of view that it is a new way of reimagining how my father could conduct. But I think, just I'll wrap up very quick because I talk too much, but the idea that I think is very interesting about the interview space is that the interview space has to be reinvented if it's not going to die. Podcast is very important for that. But as we've seen with ITV, with that extraordinary show Assembly, and what we're trying to do is that in a sense, to reinvigorate the classic form of an interview, you've almost got to dehumanize the interviewer. Because in a sense, it's become so formulaic. It's become so kind of, in a sense, structured, that if you take out that, suddenly there's nowhere for the interviewee to go. It has to be honest. They have to be honest. That's what I think, anyway.
Jamie and I sort of spend most of our days, we call it work, but it's tinkering. Right, there's a new tool, there's a new bit we can play with, and there's and that's a very fortunate way of being able to spend time. But just what we have to look at is that, actually I haven't used that bit of software in anger for probably about 3 months since we last recorded something. Do you want to just give an idea of where this is all going? What does the future of what we're building at the moment look like?
Will Parky be working in a month?
Yes, can we get it actually to do something?
Yeah, can never guarantee
Not in a
that
live
Parky
environment, he won't be, no.
Yeah, no, Parky will always misbehave, and that's part of the joy there.
It's because you're not driving the software, of course you call it a joy.
No, but if we're at a stage now where we can change the nature of conversation, who knows where we can end up. And all the stuff that we're doing along the way, every time we're making a stride forward or introducing something new to a pipeline, be that audio, visual, combined, transcription, translation, we're not doing that to replace people.
No.
This Parky project created 10 jobs that wouldn't have been there otherwise.
And that's really important, is that actually a lot of the conversation around AI is about job replacement or job reduction. But actually, as a company, since Virtually Parkinson came out, we've found that because of the enhanced levels of productivity and the efficiencies we've generated, we've actually needed to double in size.
Yeah, it's about job creation in a way.
Absolutely. So, and you look at there's a phrase generally about the democratization of content. So, it's a bit like, somebody mentioned the other day, it's a little bit like the Spotify model, because everybody can now make music in their homes, so therefore Spotify allows you to sort of upload, and now everybody can listen to your music. So you get, millions of billions of people listening to new songs, supposedly. The truth, no, 4 minutes 30, it's not our alarm. But what we're looking at in terms of visual content now is that the tools are now going to go out into people's homes.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, I think what's important is that, yes, theoretically, one person in their bedroom could become a powerhouse of a studio. They could make things. But actually, it's the knowledge and the know-how and the craft behind it that makes successful content, not just the ability to make it. And that is about training, that is about learning, that is about collaboration, that is about sort of moving forward together. And so I don't really see a world, even though we've been able to do as much as we have with as many things as we've been able to play with, we are still employing people, and we're employing more people month by month because of the fact that we need more people in order to do the work that we now want to do.
I mean,
and that's really important.
I mean, you know, I mean, humans are extraordinarily adaptable, and we're not saying that we embrace it, but every single new development in media, if you go back in time, was transformational and was probably filled with the same fear that other people have. I mean, I'm not comparing it, but let's just say the advent of sound in movies, the actual creation of the movie industry, the idea of television, the broadcasting, the satellite, the whole thing, you know, the death of video, the start of streaming. It's all these birth pangs of new technology that always comes with risks and always comes with stuff. But I honestly believe that, you know, we have to try and get ahead of it, try and be proactive with it and embrace it in a sensible way, which is why there are so many possibilities with it, and it shouldn't be approached with fear. And why I think, just as a final thing, why I found it slightly frustrating when we first went out into this, was that the coverage was adolescent at best. I mean, it was scaremongering. It was, you know, this is disgusting. What is this person doing? This is awful. This is grave robbing, and it's going to ruin the industry. Well, you know, examine it for what it was. Listen to what we were saying, and I just think that, you know, hopefully, alongside trying to create something, because we want to keep doing this, we want to develop it, is we've started a sensible and important debate.
I think one of the debates within that, touching on that, is that if you look back at the media industry, you know, 60 years ago, 40% of the jobs in the media industry at the moment didn't exist. And in another 60 years, another 40% aren't going to exist. It's an evolution of content. It's an evolution of doing things, and which is what you're saying about the transformational use of technology. You know, AI stands for artificial intelligence. It doesn't stand for autonomous. So it is a tool, and it is a very, very good tool. And of course, any tool is open to misuse.
Let's fast forward 60 years from now.
Okay.
Parky.
I'll be 102.
A few of us might not be around, but Parky will be around.
Well,
what does Parky look like then? You know, who is stewarding Parky and
Except does Parky still exist then? Because so we've followed the equity guidelines and the SAG guidelines, which say that the ownership of that voice model is owned squarely between Deep Fusion Films and Parkinson Productions. So it's not open to misuse because we've already set the guardrails in place that formulate the framework going forward.
Awesome. Well, again, exciting stuff. I know the demo didn't go exactly as planned today, but the potential, I think, is enormous. So thanks for coming by and sharing it with us. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kwame.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's good.